Have you ever worked a job so physically demanding that by the time you got home you barely had the energy to eat? Have you ever looked at your bank account at the end of the month, after all the hours, all the early mornings, all the miles, and felt a sickness in your stomach because the number was still almost nothing? Have you ever watched someone younger than you, someone who seemed to work half as hard, drive a better car, live in a better house, and thought, what do they know that I don't? If that is you, stay with me until the end of this story. Because what Thomas Reed discovered on a cold Tuesday night in a truck stop parking lot in rural Tennessee changed not just his bank account, it changed the way he understood the relationship between work and wealth forever. Thomas Reed was 38 years old and had been driving long-haul trucks for 11 years. He drove the same routes, picked up the same kinds of loads, stopped at the same truck stops, called his wife Karen from the same rest areas he had been calling from since his son Tyler was in diapers. Thomas was not lazy. Nobody who knew him would ever say that. He was up at 3:30 a.m. every morning. He maintained his truck with obsessive precision. He had never missed a delivery deadline in 11 years. His dispatcher called him the most reliable driver on the entire fleet. But reliable did not mean wealthy. After 11 years of 6-day weeks and thousands of miles, Thomas Reed had less than $400 in savings. Not 4,000. Not 40,000, 400. The rest disappeared every month into the same places. Rent on the small house outside Knoxville, truck insurance, Karen's car payment, groceries, Tyler's school supplies, the medical bill they had been paying down for 3 years since Karen's surgery. Thomas did not live extravagantly. He did not drink, he did not gamble. He did not waste money on things he did not need. He just worked. And the money came in, and the money went out, and at the end of every month, almost nothing remained. Tyler was 16 years old and wanted to be an engineer. Not vaguely wanted, specifically wanted. The kind of 16-year-old who spent his weekends watching engineering documentaries and building things in the garage from spare parts. His teachers said he had genuine talent, real potential, the kind that deserved a real university education. One evening, Thomas came home after a 4-day run. He was exhausted in the way that only long-haul drivers understand, not just physically tired, but hollowed out, like the road had taken something from him and not given it back. Tyler was at the kitchen table, working on a school project. He looked up when Thomas walked in. "Dad, my guidance counselor gave me this today." He slid a brochure across the table. University of Tennessee Engineering Program. Thomas picked it up, looked at the tuition figures on the back page. He put it down carefully, smiled at his son. "That is great, buddy. We will figure it out." But inside, the number he had just seen sat in his chest like a stone. He went to the bathroom, ran cold water over his face, and looked at himself in the mirror. 11 years on the road, 6 days a week, thousands of miles, and he could not tell his son with any honesty that he could afford to send him to university. 3 weeks later, Thomas was on a night run through eastern Tennessee. He had picked up a passenger earlier that day, a practice his company allowed on certain routes to help cover fuel costs. An older man named Frank who needed a ride from Nashville to Knoxville. Frank was in his early 70s, quiet, polite. He had worked as an accountant for 40 years and was moving back to Knoxville after his wife passed away. They talked a little through the journey, not much. Thomas was focused on the road. Frank seemed content with the silence. When Frank climbed out at the Knoxville depot, he thanked Thomas and walked away into the night. It was only 2 hours later, at a truck stop outside the city, that Thomas noticed something on the passenger seat. The journal. Old, worn leather cover, pages thick and yellowed at the edges. He picked it up carefully, opened it to the first page. In neat handwriting it said, "Things I learned about money that nobody taught me in school." Thomas sat in the cab of his truck in that dark parking lot with the engine idling and began to read. The journal belonged to a man named Walter Cross. From the dates inside, it appeared Walter had started writing it when he was around 40 years old, working a factory job in Ohio with a wife and 3 children and almost nothing saved. By the time the journal ended, based on the final entries, Walter Cross had paid off his house, put all 3 children through college, and retired comfortably at 62. Not through luck, not through inheritance, not through a windfall, through 3 principles he had discovered, tested and refined over 20 years of disciplined practice. Thomas read through the night. He did not sleep. He did not turn the engine off. He just read. Walter's first principle: pay yourself before anyone else. Walter wrote, "For the first 15 years of my working life, I paid everyone else first. The landlord, the electric company, the grocery store, the car payment, and whatever was left at the end, which was usually nothing, was supposed to be mine." Then a retired banker told me something that rearranged my entire understanding. He said, "Walter, the moment your paycheck arrives, before you pay a single bill, transfer 10% into an account you do not touch. Not 9%, not when you can afford it, 10% first. Every single time." I told him I couldn't afford to do that. He looked at me and said, "You cannot afford not to. Every month you pay yourself last. You are telling the universe and your own brain that you are the least important creditor in your life, and your brain believes you." Walter wrote, "I started the 10% that same week. It was painful. We had to cut things, but I never touched it. Within 6 months, I had more saved than in the previous 5 years combined. Not because I earned more, because I stopped treating myself as an afterthought." Thomas stopped reading. He pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. He looked at what came in each month, calculated 10%. It was not a large number, but it was not nothing either. He had just never done it first. Walter's second principle: your money needs a job. Walter wrote, "I used to think saving money meant putting it somewhere safe and leaving it alone. A savings account paying 1% interest while inflation quietly ate it alive. Then I met a school teacher named Raymond who had somehow retired at 58 with complete financial freedom on a teacher's salary. I asked him how. He said, 'Walter, idle money is dying money. Every dollar you own needs a job. Not a complicated job, not a risky job, but a job.'" He explained index funds to Walter in simple language. He explained compound interest. He drew a simple diagram on a napkin showing what $10 a week invested consistently would become over 20 years. Walter wrote, "I am not a financial expert. I did not understand everything Raymond told me, but I understood the napkin, and the napkin changed everything. That week I opened the simplest investment account I could find and began putting a small amount in every single month. Not enough to get rich quickly. Enough to let time and compound interest do what they do when you are patient enough to let them." Thomas read that section 3 times. He had always thought investing was for people with spare money, people who had already handled everything else. He had never considered that the spare money would never exist until he created it deliberately. Walter's third principle: earn more by becoming more. Walter wrote, "For years I believed my income was fixed by my job title. I was a factory worker. Factory workers earned factory wages. That was the ceiling. Then I watched a colleague named Dennis, same job, same wage, same hours, quietly build a side business repairing small engines on weekends. Within 3 years, Dennis had left the factory entirely. I asked him when he found the time. He said, 'Walter, I did not find the time. I decided what the time was for.'" Walter wrote, "I looked at what I knew how to do. I was good with numbers. I had 40 years of accounting knowledge that I was selling to one employer for one salary. I started offering simple bookkeeping help to small local businesses on evenings and weekends. Within a year, my additional income had doubled my savings rate. Within 3 years, it had changed everything." The lesson was not that everyone should start a side business. The lesson was this: your skills are worth more than one employer is paying you for them. The question is whether you are willing to find out how much more. Thomas closed the journal. He sat in the silence of the truck cab for a long time. Outside, the truck stop was quiet, a few other rigs idling in the darkness, the distant sound of the highway. He thought about 11 years. 11 years of reliable work. 11 years of being the most dependable driver on the fleet. 11 years of skills and knowledge about logistics and routes and loads and timing that he had never once considered might be worth more than his salary. He thought about Tyler's brochure on the kitchen table. Then he took out his phone and opened his notes app, and he wrote 3 things. Pay myself first, 10%, starting this week. Open an investment account this month. Find one way to earn from what I already know this year. Thomas did not transform overnight. He did not become wealthy in 6 months. What he did was start. The first month was painful. Paying himself first meant cutting things that had become habits. Subscriptions cancelled, eating differently on the road, fewer stops that were not necessary, but the savings account grew. For the first time in 11 years, it grew. In the 3rd month, Thomas mentioned to his dispatcher that he had 11 years of route knowledge and wondered if the company offered anything for drivers who could help train new recruits. The dispatcher paused, then said, "Actually, we have been trying to figure out a training program for months. Would you be interested in developing something?" It paid an additional stipend, not life-changing money, but real additional income from knowledge Thomas already had and had never thought to offer. By the end of year 1, Thomas had saved more than in the previous 5 years combined. By year 2, he had opened a simple investment account and was contributing to it every single month without fail. By the time Tyler graduated high school, 2 years later than that evening with the brochure, Thomas sat him down at the same kitchen table. He slid an envelope across to his son. Tyler opened it. His eyes went wide. "Dad, this is a start," Thomas said quietly. "Not all of it, but enough for the first year, and we will figure out the rest together." Tyler looked at his father across the table. Thomas, who had driven the same routes for 11 years, who had $400 in savings when he found that journal, who had never inherited anything, never won anything, never gotten a lucky break, just smiled. 3 years after that night in the truck stop parking lot, Thomas tracked down the family of Walter Cross through a local church in Knoxville. Walter had passed away 2 years earlier. His daughter answered the door. Thomas held out the journal. He explained where he had found it, what it had done for his family. The daughter looked at the worn journal for a long moment. Then she looked at Thomas. "My father always said that the most valuable thing he owned was not in any bank account, She closed Thomas's hand gently back around the journal. "Keep it." He would have wanted it to keep working. Thomas drove home that evening with the journal on the passenger seat beside him, the same seat where an old man named Frank had forgotten it on a cold Tuesday night. And he thought about how close he had come to never finding it, how close he had come to another 11 years of the same. My friend, Thomas's story is not about luck. It is not about a magic system or a secret that only special people have access to. It is about 3 simple principles that have been available to every working person for generations, but that nobody teaches in school, nobody explains at work, and nobody hands to you automatically. So let me give them to you right now, exactly as Walter Cross wrote them. Principle 1. Pay yourself first. The moment any money arrives, before bills, before groceries, before anything, move 10% to a separate account. Not when you can afford it. First, every time. If you cannot afford 10%, start with 5. But start today, not next month, today. Principle 2. Make your money work. Idle money loses value every year to inflation. Open the simplest low-cost index fund account you can find. Put in whatever you can every single month. Even $20, the amount matters less than the consistency. Time and compound interest do the rest. You do not need to be an expert. You need to be consistent. Principle 3. Your skills are worth more than one salary. Look at what you know how to do. Look at who could use that knowledge. You have been selling your expertise to one buyer at one price for years. Ask yourself, who else could use what I know? A training role, a consulting hour, a weekend service. One additional income stream changes everything about your financial trajectory. These 3 principles will not make you rich overnight, but applied consistently, the way Thomas applied them, they will make you financially different in 1 year than you are today. And in 5 years, unrecognizable. Here is your challenge starting tonight. Write down your current monthly income. Calculate 10% of it. Open a separate savings account if you do not have one, and transfer that 10% the next time you get paid. That one action, done consistently, is where everything begins. If this story shifted something in you, share it with someone who is working hard but still wondering why nothing is growing. They need to hear this tonight. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of Walter's 3 principles are you starting with? And subscribe to this channel for more stories about ordinary people who changed their lives, not through luck or talent, but through the right knowledge applied at the right time. Remember, the road you are on right now does not have to be the road you are on forever. You just need to know where to turn.